Hello and welcome to State of the Union. I'm Stefan Grobe in Brussels. Do you know what fatigue means? Here's what the Merriam-Webster dictionary says. A state of attitude of indifference or apathy brought on by overexposure as to a repeated series of similar events or appeals. Well, some people are beginning to feel that way when they think about the war in Ukraine. In other words, war fatigue. Not something you'd hear in public, maybe behind closed doors at best. But then the Secretary General of Nato made some public remarks that made many attentive observers sit up and take notice.
Military achievements can partly be measured in square meters, but also on the losses you are able to inflict on your adversary. Even though the front line has not moved, the Ukrainians have been able to inflict heavy losses on the Russian invaders, both measured in personnel and casualties, but also in taking out fighting capabilities. These remains important military gains, even though over the last months we haven't seen any significant territorial gains.
A static front line and no significant gains. Stoltenberg added that Ukraine has reconquered about 50% of its territory that the Russians had occupied earlier in the war. So he seems to be suggesting that it's time to think about what comes next, like ending the war. Could this be war fatigue? Absolutely no official Brussels hurry to say.
The room is full of elephants. We have a room crowded of big issues and big questions. And certainly the prospects of the war in Ukraine is one of the most important issues in which we are dealing. But to be frank, I don't see any sign of members having what you call fatigue.
Borrell was not alone in this assessment. But the thought is out there now and being talked about. One elephant in the room, as Borrell would say. How do the Ukrainians see it? Joining me now is Alexandra Matvichuk, a Ukrainian human rights lawyer and a co-recipient of the 2022 Nobel Peace Prize. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for the invitation.
So there's a lot of speculation these days about various ways to end the war. Should Ukraine negotiate a deal with Putin anytime soon?
But the problem is that Putin don't need peace. He wants to restore Russian empire, and there is no price which Putin can afford himself to pay to achieve this goal. This means that we have to help Ukraine win. Democracy must win the wars, because only spread of freedom make our world safer.
When would you say conditions are met for a negotiated peace solution?
We have to clearly define what peace doesn't mean, because peace is not occupation. Russia have to release territories which Russia occupied. I'm a human rights lawyer, and I know that people on these territories are subjected to death, ill treatment, torture, sexual violence, and we have no moral rights to leave these people alone under Russian occupation.
I want to come back to that point in a second. Another widely debated topic is continuing Western support for Ukraine. Are you worried that some sort of war fatigue is kicking in?
It's difficult to be in a war for a long time. That is why we have to rethink our goal. What do I mean? When large-scale invasion started, the civilized world told, let's help Ukraine not to fail. And Ukraine obtained the first weapons to be able to defend ourselves. The first serious sanctions against Russia were introduced into force. But this is a time to change this narrative to another one. Let's help Ukraine to win. There is a huge differences between let's help Ukraine not to fail and let's help Ukraine to win.
And finally, as a human rights lawyer, how confident are you that potential war crimes will be properly addressed going forward?
I have no doubt that Putin, if he will be alive, he will find himself in The Hague. Because it's time to break the circle of impunity that Russia enjoyed for decades. Russia committed horrible war crimes in Chechnya, in Moldova, in Georgia, in Mali, in Syria, in Libya, in other countries of the world. They have never been punished. So we have to demonstrate justice, not just for Ukrainians, but in order to prevent a next Russian attack to a next nation.
All right, Alexandra Matvichuk, human rights lawyer and a co-recipient of the 2022 Nobel Peace Prize. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you.
With the war in Ukraine heading into its second winter, much of the rest of Europe is focusing on cheery traditions and seasonal business. Christmas is less than 4 weeks away, believe it or not. It's the busiest time of the year for chocolate makers like this one in Austria. In its largest factories in Vienna, up to 100,000 chocolate centers are produced in the run-up of Christmas. But that's not all. Around 700 gingerbread hearts and stars per day are made during the festive season. The basic dough is made first and then left to rest. Then processed further, then worked again, rolled out and cut by hand. Then put in the oven, then decorated. This is to be enjoyed as much as possible until pastry fatigue kicks in. That's it for this edition. I'm Stefan Grobe. Thank you for watching. Have an excellent week.